Hello, everybody. Welcome to my weekly blog, Ricette di Giovanni, where we get together, talk about pasta, opera, and tenor Giovanni Consiglio. My name is Stefanos Koroneos. I'm the artistic director of Teatro Grattacielo and Camerata Bardi Vocal Academy. And this year we have launched an international online competition named exactly after tenor Giovanni Consiglio. While I was doing a little bit of research, I was trying to find out more about his life, about his opera path, about his career. I came across a very peculiar information about him. Giovanni apparently was a great cook. His house was always full of singers and guests who would eat his pastas, but he would never really give away his recipes. And when he would give away those recipes, he would always leave out one ingredient. So this prompted me to want to start a blog where I get together with friends and colleagues from the opera world, and we talk about pasta, we cook together, and in a way, we spend some time during these hard lockdown times for every and each one of us. And what I'm trying to accomplish is to have something for the future. What I mean by that, I mean that once we go back to what is normal and what we knew until 3 months ago, I'm hoping that these video blogs and these recipes will follow us, and we will have something to talk about when we finally get together in person. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you a wonderful human being. His name is Filippo Ciabatti, Maestro Filippo Ciabatti, who is the music director of Dartmouth Symphony. I used to know that I met Filippo not a long time ago, but I feel like I have known him forever. I met him in an audition where I was auditioning for him. And, you know, I went into the room and I saw this wonderful human being who made me feel right away welcome. And this is a very important aspect of the life of us opera singers. We audition to get the jobs, and it is very important who sits on the other side of the table, which right now I sit too in my capacity of artistic director of a company. It is very important to make feel who is auditioning welcome. That's what happened with Filippo, and that prompted and started, I should say, a wonderful friendship. And welcome, Filippo. Ciao.
Thank you. Ciao. Thank you.
How are you?
Everybody.
How are you, Filippo?
I'm great. I am great, especially now in the kitchen with you virtually.
Oh, yes, our virtual kitchens. So, first of all, out of curiosity, where exactly do you live now?
Where as you, Stefanos, we're usually in our normal world, we're always around.
Right.
But as we all know, this situation forced us, for good or bad, to stop. So this summer I had plans to be in Europe, but I am not, of course, for obvious reasons. So right now I am in White River Junction, Vermont, in the rural upper valley of the east coast of the United States.
Oh, okay. So I must say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you come from Florence, Italy?
Yes, correct.
From the city of Florence? From the city of Florence or from outside Florence?
I come from the city of Florence, raised and born generations of Florentine. So very Florentine. Me and my whole family.
Wonderful. And what are you going to be cooking for us today?
So today we're talking about pasta, of course, and I'm cooking a sugo, a sauce that is traditional of my region, of the region where I'm from, which is Tuscany, in the place where I'm from, Florence. And the sugo, the sauce is called sugo finto, which we could translate as fake sauce, right? And in Tuscany, we even call it sugo scappato. So a sauce which is technically means escaped, right? And the reason why we call it escaped or fake sauce, it's because it's a reproduction basically of the traditional ragu, which is the meat sauce, but without the meat. So that's why we call it fake sauce or escaped sauce, because the meat has escaped the sauce. So in kind of a traditional Tuscan irony, that's how they called it. And of course, as all of the Italian, most of our cuisine in Italy comes from the poor tradition, you know, the tradition of the most humble people that did not have the money to always buy meat, and therefore they came up with the sauce that it's similar in consistent and somehow in flavor to a meat sauce, but it's without the meat. So that's what we're gonna cook today.
I am pretty excited because, you know, my thought when I started this vlog 3 weeks ago was exactly not to present a tomato sauce or a ragu sauce to everybody who wants to listen, but I wanted to present something that it was a little bit more particular, a little bit more unusual in a certain way, and yeah, that's absolutely perfect. But before we start, and this is something that I'm really interested to know, is how did you get involved with opera and with the opera world? What happened that got you to be the wonderful opera conductor that I know you are?
Well, I started, as I said, I was born and raised in Florence, and I started playing the piano very early on, around 5 years old. I have to say, very early in my life, I realized I wanted to be a conductor. So I was around 10, 12 years old, because I remember I went to see a concert. So my first approach to this, as a concert goer, as a ticket holder, so to speak, it was a symphonic concert. And I still remember very well the program, and I still remember that was the famous cellist Misha Maisky was the soloist. But the first approach to opera was a few months later, and it was with a production of Trovatore, al Maggio Musicale in Florence. And I was to be meta, and I remember this incredible. I remember very well the first concert I went to, and I was so fascinated by the idea of the sound, that there could be someone that could share the sound with their hands. This was immediately something, and the concept of sound has always fascinated me through my whole career, my life. But then I remember when I went to see this beautiful production of Trovatore, when in the chorus part, all these fires on stage that start to sparkle in this production from everywhere, I remain extremely fascinated, because I mean, not only the music, but we had the words, the story, the narration, the show. So that's when I started to really getting hooked up, so to speak, with opera. And after that, the more I got some skills at the piano, the more I started to accompany singers, which has been my career path at the beginning, really. And it's really taught me a lot. And so that's how and then from that moment on, I never stopped being interested and intrigued and in love with opera and with singers, really.
Right. So I would say at this point, let's start cooking.
Yes.
Also, because I'm very excited, you were telling me that you have learned a technique where you cut veggies in a certain way. So please tell us all about it.
Yes. Well, so what I was saying before about this sugo finto, this fake sauce, one of the characteristics is that it needs to resemble somehow the texture of a meat sauce, right? And the texture of a meat sauce is not too thin. It's not too much of a paste, right? it needs to have some coarse consistency. So as you of course know, and maybe some of our listeners, viewers will know, the first rule of any sauce, meat sauce in Italy, is what we call battuto or soffritto, or you can trito, odor, we can call it in many different ways, but it's basically a bunch of spices and vegetables that need to be that are basically the base of the sauce, right? So in our case, of course, I coarsely for now chopped some carrots, some onions, celery, right? And then of course some spices. I put together here some basil, parsley, and rosemary. But in order to, and this is my recommendation, in order to make these kind of base thin, but not too thin that it becomes a paste, it is recommended, and that was the old tradition of the Tuscan cuisine, to do it with a knife instead of with a mixer, right? And that's what we call battuto al coltello, you know, un battuto, so, you know, all of these vegetables, but with a knife instead of, in order to do that, I recommend to take also, I mean, now we can take some of it. Of course, you can also divide, depends on how the quantities of, can you see? Yeah. The quantities of what you have.
Right.
You take it, you put it all together, for example. And then what I recommend is that the technique should be that you take the knife, so you put the vegetables in a way that kind of tied together. You use your left hand to hold the knife, and you start doing that, right? And then when you need to move the knife, you move it, and you start chopping the vegetables, right?
Right.
Now, after, of course, you need to repeat this operation multiple times, and every time I recommend that you recollect your vegetables and you start again. And
oh wow, you are good with knives. That's wow.
And of course, I mean, one other technique, of course, after a while, you can also turn this over if you want to, and still have the same technique of chopping the vegetables in this way. Of course, the vegetable beforehand, they need to be cleaned and chopped. I mean, this is the celery needs to be, you need to take the, you need to, when you clean the celery, you need to make sure that you break it in half and you take those inside filaments, we call them fili in Italian, but
right.
Of it, of course, you chop the carrots, you peel them first, you clean the tomato, the onion, and you have to continue to do that until this is that is thin. I mean, it doesn't have to be, to remain too coarse, of course, but also not a paste.
Right. Which in the normal sugo, the meat sugo, it should be a paste because it becomes a paste. But in this,
exactly. I mean, in the sugo, in the region, so you can also do, you know, a battuto al coltello like this, but it's a little bit less important because the coarse part of the meat sauce is the meat.
right.
So if what we call the soffritto, the battuto, it's a little bit more thin, is less important, I would say, right? So sometimes I have to be honest with, especially when I don't have as much time to do the sugo, I really sometimes even use the mixer. But for this particular one, you can't, because then it kind of defeats the purpose, right? So once, now this is an okay, maybe it still needs another little bit of, another couple of, Now, once you've arrived to, so just to give a little bit of an idea of the proportion, I used 1 onion,
Okay.
3 carrots, and also 3 celery.
Okay.
Then, once this is done, I would also recommend to do the same thing, like to take with the spices.
Okay.
One thing again, the basil you can include it. Wait, let's see if I can. Yes, you can include it, or you can also add it at the end, or you can do both. One thing that is very Tuscan that I recommend in this is rosemary.
Oh yes, I love rosemary.
Which Italians call rosmarino. We in Tuscany called it ramerino. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No. I mean, I grew up in Milano, which is not very far away from you guys, but the traditions are totally different.
Totally, yes.
Oh yes, I have never heard of that before.
Yes, il rosmarino is the Italian name. The Tuscan name, so to speak, is ramerino. Okay. And it's ramerino. We also do, you know, this in Tuscany you do il pan di ramerino for Easter, which is this particular kind of dish that you do for Easter, which is a bread with the rosemary. Mm-hmm. So you make also a battuto of the spices.
Okay.
Then, now of course this could also be cut a little bit more, but I think you got the idea. Mm-hmm. Once all of this is ready, then you turn this here. Hopefully you can see this.
Yes.
It is worse probably, right?
Yeah, it is worse. Yes. Better without light.
So better without light. So you put some olive oil in it, and you turn it on, and you make sure that the olive oil gets a little bit hot.
Okay.
And after that, you put your battuto al coltello inside, and you start by, we in Italian say golden it.
Right.
Make sure that it becomes a little bit golden so that it cooks a little bit, right? So that's the first step. Mm-hmm. When the battuto, when our tripe is golden, you make sure that you put half of a glass of red wine, which is also in a way really the same procedure that we do to do the regular ragu, exactly. And then you have to leave the alcoholic part of the wine to evaporate.
Yeah.
And then when that happens, you put the tomato sauce in. Now you can do this in 2 ways. You can do it either with a regular tomato paste, right? I mean, not paste, yes, passata. Mm-hmm. Or you can do it, what I like to do it more is with peeled tomatoes. Oh. What I have here. However, when you do it with peeled tomatoes, like here, you have to make sure that you crush them. Okay. Right? Very, you know, you just have to crush them with a fork. Some people do it even with the hand. So that you make sure that all of the juice comes out of the tomatoes. Okay. Right. So now the difference, of course, is that with a tomato, with just a juice of tomato, what we call una passata, it will become a little bit more smooth. Right. With the peeled tomatoes, it will be a little bit more rustic. More, which I like personally a little bit more.
Right. And I mean, you know, I have been plenty of times in Tuscany and in your area, and what was surprising for me the first time that I had some Tuscan food was exactly that it had this rustic feeling, you know, from your minestrone to your pasta to your sauces to your bread has this incredible rustic feeling. I will never forget, there is a place close to Lucca called Monte Carlo di Lucca. It's a small castle, and inside this castle there is a small city with a theater. And I was there long time ago, and I remember this wonderful rustic restaurants where you would have exactly recipes like your recipe.
Well, in fact, I have to say that when you asked me about, when we started this conversation about this video today, and you asked me about a Tuscan sauce, so to speak.
Yeah.
I had to think about it because in Tuscany, what is more traditional and famous and specific to the area are the soups for fruit dishes, and of course the meat. Everybody knows the steak alla Fiorentina, the steak Florentine. But the soups, as you were saying, it's very true that the traditions is very rustic, right? And also all come from the old tradition of again the poor people, right? For example, we have la ribollita, which is the famous soup with the bread of the day before, and the soup that should be boiled again the day after. La pappa al pomodoro, which is basically bread and tomato, right? La zuppa di fagioli, which is a bean soup. Again, so these are all very traditional Tuscan soups. They all take origin from old Italian, an old Tuscan tradition made of farmers, of people with not much money. And this is, again, the sauce that we're doing today. It's really the demonstration of that.
Yes. If I may also add, you guys are pretty famous for your wines.
Oh, yes. Yes, we are pretty famous for the wine, and especially, of course, in the Chianti area, as everybody knows. And so all the winery around Florence, but also around Siena. Right.
So what I would like to know from you is how do you live this peculiar period that we are living right now in our lives? All this lockdown, these huge loss that we have all suffered in our industry. How do you live through that? Tell me a little bit about your days, about your...
Well, it's been an interesting process because I have to be honest with you. I mean, at the beginning, it wasn't quite clear how long this situation would have been with us. So, you know, I lived it a little bit more. I thought, well, this is going to be some sort of a retreat, right? I'm going to take my time to study the scores that I've never, have never been able to study, to do to do certain things that I didn't get to with the busy everyday life of performance after performance.
Right.
And I did that at the beginning. Then I realized, honestly, after a little while, when the cancellation started to arrive on a longer period of time, how impacting this would have been for our life and our industry. And I have to say, it took me some time to grieve, because I think we all need to be honest with each other. This is not, a happy time for musicians and artists. This is really a big it isn't for anybody, of course, but for people in our field, it's a big loss of many things, not only of jobs, but also of our lifestyle, which is very peculiar. So I had to take some time to realize and grieve what was happening. Now I kind of went back to the idea of living this time more kind of a dual meaning. One meaning is to go back and really do what I didn't ever have the time to do. I've studied, I've always wanted to study German. This is what I'm doing. I've always wanted to pick up the violin. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting more into the technical aspect of the string technique, which is something that the conductor should do. Nevertheless, but now I have more time to do it. I went back to play the piano, and I'm thinking of doing a few online chamber music concerts with some colleagues. And I have picked up those scores and picking up those scores that have been in my library for a while. At the same time, sorry that in the meantime I will put some of the wine that we talked about.
Yes.
At the same time, I am now starting to realize, and I'm sure, Stefanos, you can talk more about this too, that this time is also an opportunity for creatively thinking outside of the box of how we can take advantage of this moving forward, which doesn't mean that our life, ours is a live art and needs to go back to be a live art.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But we can take advantage and think outside of the box at this moment, because first of all, music needs to keep going. I truly believe, I've always believed my whole life, that if society was closer to what we do in music, if our world was closer about the idea of sharing and listening, which is at the base of our profession, it would really be a better society. So I truly hope that this moment, also with everything else that is going on in the world, will be an opportunity for rethinking that. And at the same time, I think our industry can think about what we could do better moving forward, and this could be an opportunity. And I applaud your work, Stefanos, the work of Teatro Grattacielo, Camerata dei Bardi, to find creative ways to keep opera and artists busy with their craft.
Well, I mean, the whole idea is that we had to reinvent ourselves. We were, when all this happened, we were about to start our very first young artist program, Camerata Bardi Vocal Academy. And, it was a choice between closing off everything and not doing anything, and then maybe doing something that was close to what we needed to do, but online. And that's what we did. And, for me, it's a great time, exactly like you said some things that really touched my heart. To rethink what the music industry, the opera industry can do to better itself in so many ways, and what can we do to get going, being creative until we go back to what we know and what is wonderful, which is live performances. In the meantime, there is so much that we can do to keep the music alive, to keep us alive, because this is important. It's not it's about our audiences, it's about our people who follow us, but it's also about us, about what our souls need at this moment. What do we do to get our souls to a place where we have something to look forward, or we do something that makes us happy. And exactly, this blog gives me life, makes me happy, and I hope it makes so many other people happy, exactly for that reason, because I get to do what I am used to do, get together with my friends, with the people that I love, cook and talk about my favorite things. Going back to your recipe. So now the wine is going to evaporate.
So now once the wine is evaporated,
right?
And it's mainly the alcoholic part. You put the peeled tomatoes or the tomato juice, or the peeled tomatoes that you've crushed before into that.
Okay.
With a little bit of water if needed. Usually a little bit of water helps to, make it a little bit more liquid and keep it going more.
Okay.
Now, after that, what I recommend is that you use salt and pepper. You adjust it with salt and pepper. And once you've done that, I recommend the slow cooking. So what I do is that I use a lid, which is here, and I close I'll bring it here.
Yes.
Halfway, maybe you think this is the way my mom and my grandmother always used to do it. Is to half close and then you bring down the heat, and then you leave it boiling for 45, 50 minutes.
Okay.
The way that the vegetables really cook and the sauce dry.
Mhm. And then the sauce is ready. And I want to ask you, this is something that also fascinates me. What is the best pasta, type of pasta to pair together with a sauce like this?
This is a great question. I would say for me, I mean, of course, there are many, like, this is really a personal thing.
Right.
I like rigatoni the most.
Okay. Okay.
But I also have to confess that I'm more of a short pasta kind of guy than a long pasta kind of guy. But that's up to, you know, that's up to the individual taste.
You got me there. I'm a short pasta guy too.
Oh, I didn't know this about you, Stefanos. It's nice to learn this, that we have this in common too.
Yes. I love rigatoni, I love penne, I love orecchiette, which
great.
would be probably not the best choice to pair with. Maybe better something like penne or rigatoni, exactly. Yeah, that's, I mean, I will definitely try to make that sauce these days. And I had no idea that you could do a ragu without being a ragu. And for me, it's actually kind of refreshing to know that, because I'm trying to stay lately away from too much meat.
Yeah, I mean,
excellent. So, but before I leave you, I want to ask you, what do you want to tell us about yourself? Anything you want to say?
a funny story or
anything you want to say? It's a surprise question. Surprise me with whatever you want to ask about you.
So if I can share a fun detail that always my family used to say. We talked before about my upbringing and, you know, my education and the way I came about to be a musician. And I don't have strong memory of, I mean, I do remember this, but I you know, when we are younger, the memories are not as strong, but my family does have strong memory of this. They told my grandfather and grandmother that are not with us anymore, but they've been some of the closest people I've had. They used to come every afternoon at my apartment, my house in Florence, because usually my mother, my father, of course, were working, right? And since I was a little kid, 8, 9 years old, I would always, and I had this love for music. Mm-hmm. I would oblige them to sit down in the living room. I would put a Beethoven symphony on the stereo. There was the CDs at the time. I remember I had the famous Karajan recording that I was very proud that I bought, and they would have to sit through the whole symphony watching me conduct. The recording with a little stick that I made up at the time. And my mother always tells me that they were so nice people that they wouldn't say anything. They would stay there, but they have slept through a lot of symphonies virtually conducted by me at the time. So that's, I think, I guess a funny thing I can share about my obsession with the job since I was very young.
Listen, to do what we do, you have to be obsessed.
I think so. A little bit.
Our job requires a lot of studying, a lot of preparing, a lot of hours our job is not a 9-to-5 job. It's so much. So I get it. If you have the passion and the talent, of course, it shows pretty early. Filippo, thank you so much.
Of course, my pleasure, Stefanos.
Made my day. You have really made my day. I send all the love to you, and I do hope to see you very soon in person.
Likewise.
Thank you for being with me. Thank you for being with us. And ciao, buon appetito. And I will make your sauce one of these days.
I will take your word for it. Ciao a tutti. It's been
Ciao.
a pleasure to meet you all through the website that we have, Facebook and all of our wonderful social media channels.
Yes,
Ciao.
yes. Thank you. Ciao.